And there is a level that men need to continue to work and to just go do. We bond by doing. And so, I see that. But what I fear is that so many of the generations have not been more in touch with their emotions.
Dadhood, I be repping dadhood. Let's go.
All right, what's happening, Dadhood? We are back. I got Bubba Page in the studio today. We're chatting it up. He's repping a newest investment brand on here. We'll get into that in a minute. But the greatest thing is, and sometimes, unfortunately, the listeners don't get some of the behind the scenes. We were just like jamming behind the scenes of a couple things, and we'll get into those on the show. But Bubba, welcome to the Dadhood podcast, my friends.
I'm stoked to be here. Let's go.
Let's go, man. So, a lot of your content's out there and you talk a lot about your family, which is one reason I'm excited to have you on the show, because that's what this is all about. But some of the other things that you're doing outside of that as well is just as important, as impactful, because the Dadhood is all about not just dads, but it's guy stuff, men stuff in general. And we're going to jump into it. So let's give the listeners that don't know and haven't done the research like myself a little insight about your family life and some of the things that just gets Bubba going and driven in this world.
You got it, man. So first thing first, the name is Bubba. I was a fat baby. The name stuck. We're all friends. You can call me Bubba. My real name is Brandt. Brandt. Hardly anybody knows that. Nobody calls me that. But Bubba it is, and we're all buddies now, so it's all good, right? First thing first, I'm a believer in the big man, God and Jesus Christ. That's like what I base all my life off of, because it's faith, family, fitness, finance, fun, freedom, all that kind of stuff. Right here, I've got 8 children, you guys, 8. So this is us together, and then there are 8 around here from 5 to 15, 4 boys, 4 girls. It's a blast. The one downer is that last year I ended up going through a divorce. And so now it is me as a solo, co-parenting with their mom, which is great. We're making that work. But that has thrown my life for definitely a different curveball than I ever expected. But so we'll talk more about that. Don't worry. But for me, it's looking at God as my ultimate, guiding point. That's like where everything starts. But I am an entrepreneur and I'm an investor. My most recent investment, Josh's Pickles, just got into Harmon's. So if you're in Utah or in this like Intermountain West area, Harmon's is one of the nicest kind of grocery store lines out there. We're going to get them all over the place. So I'm supporting Josh because he's my buddy, 5th generation brine master, but I love investing. So I've invested in over 30 companies individually, and then another like 130 companies through different funds. And so you may have heard of like Cotopaxi or Bonobos or Allbirds Shoes or Gab Wireless or, so just like a ton of these companies out there I've written checks into because I love it. It's been one of my favorite things to do. As an entrepreneur, I built and sold the company from 2009 to 2020. And then I had actually hired a CEO in 2014. And then we ended up selling in 2020. When I hired the CEO in 2014, I started a venture-backed software company. And so I ended up keeping the first one and then building another one. And for 2.5 years later, I had to shut it down. Didn't pan out. And as an entrepreneur, if you've been around long enough, some things are going to pan out, some things don't. That's part of the world. You learn a lot more from your failures than you do your successes. And then my wife at the time and I built a brand around the Page company. And it was all about helping women with productivity, budgeting, and cooking. And so we had a couple million followers across our platforms. And so we built these products specific for that target demographic and did quite well. Very profitable business, cash flowed like crazy. And then divorce came, and that did not stay with me. Let's just put it that way. And I was able to essentially sold my ownership in that back to her. And so now today I run influence.vc. So it's venture capital investing into consumer product, consumer tech. So this is a consumer product. Gab Wireless would be considered like consumer tech. And I love supporting entrepreneurs. I love being a mentor, an advisor. I run thebusinessbootcamp.com. And so I'm coaching one-on-one. We have group coaching that's happening for those that want to be an entrepreneur, build their own business, or at least take theirs to the next level. And then how we connected is that I've just had this like passion, and I've been compelled to do something with fathers. And so we're going to be doing some cool things here, I think, in the future, but it's called fatherhoodmovement.com.
Yes.
And we're looking at doing, father-son retreats, father-daughter retreats, fatherhood retreats. I own a 75-acre ranch in Huntsville, Utah. And so we might be able to, throw some folks up there and have a good time out in the country. And just, working through with people, helping them overcome some of these challenges, hopefully waking up us men to reach our full and potential as fathers, as husbands. And my ultimate goal is to bring people to Jesus. And so if I could do that through business and entrepreneurship and fatherhood, that's going to be what I'm going to be doing. So anyway, that gave you a lot of information, but that's me in a nutshell, man.
That is so awesome, man. And you talked about something recently, going through this divorce, obviously, having 8 children ranging from the age of 5 to 15. How have you navigated that? There's a lot of dads that are going through very similar situations, and that's what I want to bring this value and your expertise into that. Like, how have you been able to navigate the emotional stress that could possibly have on your children, and just like working through some of that with them?
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. I think most men, they don't talk about this stuff, right? They just hunker down, shove the emotions down, and just plug along. And, part of that element is okay. Like, we have to stay strong. That's like part of our nature. It's kind of our divine responsibility. But there is a huge component of a healing that is necessary for men to go through. And I didn't know this a few years ago. And so as I started to go through this divorce process, it was a wake-up call to where, one, I know I needed God more than ever. Like, I could not go through this alone. I don't know how people do it without God. That's just not even like in my realm of understanding. Because for me to be able to go to my maker and say, like, I can't do this alone. Like, I need your help with this. This is too much for me to handle. It was that, like, pleading on my knees. That is what brought me so much closer to him. And it taught me these unique things that I should have known already, but I didn't. I hadn't fully grasped what true charity meant and the true love of Christ when you have to have that charity for maybe somebody who has hurt you in the past, somebody that you need to forgive or that you need to ask forgiveness from. Like, either way, it's this deep level of humility that normally only comes from being thrown around and getting stomped on or having some horrible trial that you have to go through. And I know in the scriptures it talks about being compelled to be humbled. And the hope was that I didn't have to be compelled, but unfortunately I think I did. And I would hope that the men that I get to work with on a one-on-one basis, whether it's coaching or in my group programs or community, it's like, I want them to wake up before something like this happens. If I can stop or help, these men to not go through what I did from a divorce standpoint, that's a huge part of the fatherhood movement. And so, we're talking about healing through Jesus Christ, the ultimate healer, but incorporating kind of the psychology behind men and how we deal with things. And right now, most of us shove it all down. And what happens is it ends up rearing its head in the worst times. Whenever we get triggered and we lose a sense of like, our nervous system gets a little out of whack, then we react instead of taking a moment to breathe, to get into that more controlled mindset, and then being able to act in a more responsible way. And so when I look at that, let me just share the difference between my opinion of masculinity and femininity. And this is the divine masculine I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, muscles and guns and tattoos and cigars. Like, no, not what the world says is masculine, but what God teaches us is masculine, Jesus as the masculine. And if you think about what happened with the woman who got caught in adultery, you've got all these people who are surrounding her holding stones. They've got to be yelling and cursing and screaming and saying, we're going to kill this woman because we're going to stone her because of what she's done. And they bring Jesus in here to be like, what are you going to say about this, right? Like, she has to. That's the law. We have to do it. And I can only imagine how chaotic that time frame is. And she's probably bawling her eyes out because she thinks she's going to die. You've got all these people who are cursing her name and like wanting, and he is calm. he is just so calm. And I look at that and I'm like, wait a minute, how could he be? He's not flustered. He's not triggered. He's totally in control of his own emotions. And he is obviously wise beyond anything because he's Jesus. But as an example, he walks into that situation of pure and utter chaos, which sometimes can be a relationship or a marriage. Sometimes a woman might be in her feminine nature more like water, where it's fluid, and it can be calm at times, but it can be a thundering rainstorm in your relationship. And as men, sometimes we get defensive. We take things personally, or we fight, flight, or freeze. And sometimes we fight and we want to protect or defend ourselves. And he walks in there so calm. And to me, I visualize that like he was the bowl that held the water of emotion, that crazy chaos that was, crashing and waves are tumbling. And he was just this solid bowl that was a secure, safe structure that gave room and space for this water, for this emotion to be there. And as men, as truly masculine men, when we become healed from the inside out, and we are able to notice and recognize when there is a trigger, and we will be, when there is one, and then get into our right state of mind, whether that's breathing, the box breathing method you've heard of, maybe 5 seconds in through the nose, hold it for 5 seconds, and out 10 seconds with your mouth. Like that type of breathing over and over again will help to reset that nervous system, get you into a calmer state of mind so that you can act like that safe and secure bowl. And so that the water that's going around you, whether that's a spouse or your kids or you're at work or whatever it is, you're able to hold space for that person and for that emotion because you're safe and you're not going to react. You're not going to jump in. You're not going to, yell or demean someone in any way, shape, or form because you, like Jesus, have now created this safe environment. And I just look at with fathers, whether you're at work and you get triggered, you're at home, you get triggered, your spouse, there's so many places where you might feel that tension to get in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. It's our duty, I believe. It's our duty, the God-given duty as a divine masculine man, a priesthood holder, if you will, is to be that safe bowl for whatever the chaos is. And of course, what did Jesus do? He completely stifled their intentions. He was level-headed. He spoke calmly to the crowd, and he didn't condone the sin. He didn't love the sin, right? I mean, what had happened was wrong, and he made that very clear. But he showed empathy and love, and that woman, I believe, walked away feeling that total love. And he said, basically repent and go sin no more. And I can only imagine how that woman felt as she walked away feeling not, one, she was alive, two, feeling loved by Jesus, and knowing that, yes, what she did was wrong, but that she can come back from that. And look, I just think we as men, we need a brotherhood that is, I believe, how the quorums were supposed to be in the church. And we struggle to have intimate connection there. And I don't know if that's culturally speaking or whatnot, but why there's something like a dadhood and a fatherhood movement is that we are desperate to have a brotherhood of men who can lift us and support each other there is no way that we're going to be trashing women. That is absolutely not what these men's groups are all about. It is about becoming stronger as a man emotionally, spiritually, physically, having more potential financial freedom so that you can provide and preside in your home and protect. This is about getting control over your mind and over your indulgences, the natural man. This is about becoming more like Jesus so that when we do come into our home, we have an unbelievable ability to communicate, to listen, to hear, and create a safe environment for our spouses and for our children to come in with whatever the issues that they're dealing with. And we can be that strong individual. But we need a place. We need a place for men to come and do that, to learn how to do that, to practice how we do this. When they do falter, that they can come and learn and say, dang it, I reacted and I shouldn't have reacted. I know better. And the men are there to help support and say, you know what, brother, you can do it next time. Like, let's practice, let's role play, let's whatever it is to get you in the right state of mind, the right emotional state, the right spiritual state. We all need Jesus more than ever. That's just, I mean, you can tell I'm passionate about this. This is absolutely what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, is helping people in this regard. And I hope any of that story made sense for you guys out there. But that's my soapbox.
No, absolutely. You know, I talk about that a lot. This, like, I call it like conscious masculinity, because masculinity in itself is not a toxic thing. It's not a horrible thing. It's what we have. And so there's outlets that we want to have to be able to demonstrate that, or release some of it, right? And I was joking that I love going up to my cabin, and I might go up there and, you know, take my shirt off and chop some wood and feel like hoorah and all that. But if I showed up in my dinner table and acted that same way, that wouldn't work, right? So it's being able to be aware of the tone, what we're bringing to the table, how we're interacting with the people around us has such an impact, right? And knowing, I love that analogy of having the bowl, having that safe space, that it's not about being stoic and not having emotions. It's about being able to regulate your emotions, identify those triggers, figure out ways to be able to safely bring those triggers back down your central nervous system. Like you said, breath work. You know, I had opportunity to actually train with Wim out in Spain and do some breath work training. And I know the power of that. And obviously you do, you're talking about the box breathing, you know, the power of that. Just sometimes re-regulating your central nervous system so that your children, even if they're going through their own chaos, they can feel the sense of security. They can feel that calmness around them. They can feel the presence of their dad, not jumping and being chaotic with them, but being there and present and just guiding through that safety, if you will, is, man, it's so important. It's so
I
important.
love that.
Yeah.
You know, I think none of us are really taught this growing up, right? We're not taught this. We're taught to just, I don't know about you, but I feel like we're at maybe a similar age range here. So, you know, we're taught that, you know, when we fall, you just get back up and keep going. And, or if we're, you know, feeling emotions, shove it down and just go and just keep, you know, go back to work. And there is a level that men need to continue to work and to just go do. We bond by doing. And so, you know, I see that. But what I fear is that so many of the generations have not been more in touch with their emotions. And I'm not saying in a victim mentality way. That is not at all what I'm trying to say. But being able to recognize what you feel and what's happening to your body in that moment gives you more power to be in control. And you said it, man. When your kids are coming in there, they will. I've got 8. It's chaotic all the time. But if they're having a rough morning or a rough afternoon, rough school or whatever it was, and they come home and I'm on edge because I just had a rough day at work, you know, whatever, the spouse didn't say something nice, I feel, you know, like I'm not respected or whatever. And then the kid comes and shares this emotional chaos and we react. That's a little T trauma, in my opinion. Like, not big T necessarily, but little T trauma that this child may feel like they're not being seen, heard, loved in that moment. And it had really nothing to do with that. It was our own effort of not being regulated. And unfortunately, they or the spouse receive the back end of that. And to me, that is just not how it's meant to be. We are meant as men to be the emotional regulator. Like, we are meant to be the solid state. But where we do need a place to open up and to share with true vulnerability is with a brotherhood, a healthy brotherhood that can.
Not a dumping brotherhood.
Not a dumping. This is not a blame. This is no finger pointing. This is not victimville.
Yeah.
This is, we are accountable for every action, every word, thought, deed. Like, we have to hold ourselves to an unbelievable amount of accountability, to the point where most are going to be uncomfortable with the amount of accountability that we must take as men. But this is absolutely necessary for us to be that safe space for children and spouse, to feel the ultimate safety, to feel the ultimate love. And to me, I believe that's a huge part of us becoming like Jesus actually means. And it's being in that place where we turn to him. And if we do our job turning to him and following his principles and his teachings and his path, then our family can follow us as we go and make that path. But if we can't ourselves turn to Jesus, then who are they following? Who are our children and our spouses who's going to lead them? We have to do that, in my opinion. And look, this is like the traditional thought that, it is not politically correct, right? In today's day. And I'm just going to put that out there, that I don't believe in the political correctness of where, how do I describe this in the right way? I don't believe in what feminism has done to our world. And I don't believe in what men have done in losing their true divine masculinity. So again, not pointing fingers at just feminine. This is the masculine too, that we've failed in so many ways. But I do believe there is a revival that is coming back with a Christian revival, with a divinely masculine revival, where it is not just the, men getting girls and cars and money anymore. That has had its time, but that's not what this life is all about. It's about being a father, raising children, having a spouse that loves and adores you, that you respect and worship the ground she walks on. Like, this is now the time. And I feel like it's awakening. It's an awakening, which is why you're doing, the part of what you're doing, dadhood and fatherhood movement. And there's so many others that are starting to come out, because we are desperate for more of us to wake up to the reality of our situation. And I feel like it's a coming of age where we've swung so far one direction, and now we're coming back, hopefully in the most healthy arena. And men, we've got to be strong physically. We've got to be strong mentally. We need to be strong spiritually. We need to be strong financially, because we got to provide. And I believe entrepreneurship and investing is one of the best ways of doing that. And so that's the reason I have the businessbootcamp.com and influence.vc. And it's like all of these areas, when we work towards those ourselves and we have a clear direction of who we are, where we're going, why, then we're able to lead the family better than we ever have been in the past. Anyway, that's a big piece of my passion for sure.
Absolutely. One of the big questions I have is, throughout this turmoil, like the divorce that you went through, how are you able to I know that you have a strong spiritual bond, and I know that your guidance and reference with Jesus and God has obviously helped along this journey, but how are you able to still maintain that desire to build, to create your businesses, to keep showing up, to keep being fit, having your faith, your fitness, your finances? How are you able to do these things while it seemed like probably externally your world's just crushing around you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for all those men out there who are dealing with something like this, look, if your spouse has said something like, I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore, I want to separate, I want a divorce, or they've had an affair. There's a group that I had been a part of that call these the slap. Okay. So these 4 things are the slap, they call it. And it was fascinating, because as I was learning about these principles, and this is where your world is crushing around you, right? Like, it's when you hear these things, you just like crush, you're dying inside. And what they tried to teach was that this is a warning, a very, very heavy warning, that your spouse is not receiving necessarily everything that she needs from you. And there's a reason why one of these 4 things were stated. Most of us, we hear that and we are completely blown away. Like, what? Where is this coming from? I had no idea. But most of us have no idea what to do. We have no idea what to do, how to fix it, how to solve it. And so as I went through this process myself, I was just as confused and trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? I'm trying to be a good dad. I'm trying to provide. I'm trying to be a good human. but I didn't realize that the only person I could control was myself. I couldn't change anyone else. I could only change myself. And so I started reading books like Attached, where it talked about attachment style. And if you haven't heard about this book, I highly recommend it. It talks about having an anxious attachment and an avoidant attachment, or the goal is to be securely attached. And the hope is that whatever happened in our childhood typically is what creates the avoidant or anxious attachment. And until we reach deep inside and start to understand some of these wounds that we had from big T trauma down to little T trauma as kids, if we don't start to understand why we have those attachment styles and what our spouse's attachment style is, then we can't even begin the process of healing. And so, with me, I would get defensive. I would take things personally. And the reality is I just needed to wake up and take it like a man. And instead of, trying to defend myself but I do this and this and this, just owned it with full responsibility and saying, you know what, you're right. I can do better. What else? What else can I do better? And then starting to understand, my own personal dynamic when I would get a trigger and how I would respond or react to that. And knowing that if I was a safer, and meaning emotionally and like conversationally safe, more empathetic, more compassionate, had more charity, then I could have seen more of what was truly happening. Now, I believe that I didn't have the resources that I needed. And so now that I'm learning these resources, and I'm not going to say I'm the expert, there's incredible experts who've written the books on this stuff. And so, going through therapy and having coaches and books and healing retreats, all of these pieces have helped me to try and, learn how to regulate my nervous system, to take accountability for me getting defensive, taking things personally, not seeing through some of the emotion that was being, created, and not being as that bull that I needed to be. Like, this is how I've been able to start going through it. But they call it doing the work. Because it's work. Yeah. It's actual work. And instead of me listening to entrepreneurship books, I was listening to these types of books. And instead of going to the conference to help me as an investor, I went to the healing retreats and learned about breath work. And it's like, I had to take this time, and I was compelled to do it to begin this healing process. And so men who are listening to this, just know, like, if any of those four things have happened to you, that is a huge, very important warning. This is not something to take lightly. And if you have one of those four warnings, it also doesn't mean that it's all over yet. It means that you still have an opportunity to recognize what you can do to start changing. And what I unfortunately learned too late is that as I and we as men begin to change and heal, truly heal, and get in control of these emotional regulations, we provide safe space for others to begin to heal on their own. Not that because we can't change them, right? We can't force any change. But that space is what gives them the ability to see potentially where they also can heal. Because it is a two-way street in every relationship. It's not just one, but if we begin and if we take accountability as men to lead by example in this healing process, then it will give space for our children or our spouse to also feel like they can heal without feeling like they're going to be judged, without feeling like they're going to be looked down upon, or without them feeling like they can't share emotion and we get triggered by them sharing an emotion. And so for me, this is obviously God is my number one in worship and scripture study and prayer and fasting. That is the number one component of my healing. And then I brought in all of the psychology of healing and it's wild. I'm a true believer in the atonement of Jesus Christ. I believe we can all be healed through the master healer. But for me personally, I wasn't capable of taking just the Jesus angle without incorporating the psychological component. And so I needed both to be able to experience the true level of healing that was needed for me. And I'm all in with Jesus, but I still needed these other components. And so I want to share and help as many men as possible to be able to get through these types of experiences in the best way possible, to save as many marriages as possible, to give them strength to be the best father as possible. And if they've already been through the divorce, to get them prepared for that next relationship, because you don't want to go in without some of these pieces beginning to heal. I don't think you have to be 100% healed. I think that's a lifelong journey, but you need to begin the process and be self-aware enough so that when you engage in a new relationship, you at least know what you need to be working on and are actively working on it.
Absolutely. You've said a couple things, Bubba. Keep referring to big T and little T. Do you want to hit on that for the listeners of what you mean by that?
Yeah. So for me, big T trauma is like sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. Like this is the real deal that you have dealt with in your life. And there's many who are out there who have dealt with this. And most of the time that needs a higher level of therapy of like, I'm not a licensed therapist. Never, I'm not going to claim that at all. But big T trauma is something that needs to be worked on. And, you could be 40, 50, 60 years old. I don't care. As a man, you still need to work on that. I don't care if you were sexually abused as an 8-year-old. If you have not healed from that process yet, you must now do it, no matter how hard it is to go back there and bring up those memories or to call out what happened to who and with whom. Like this needs to be worked on because you must heal to become the truest self that you can be. And so that's big T trauma, in my opinion. Little T trauma, so, little T, to me is where, look, I was the youngest of 4 children. My mom and dad were phenomenal. They were amazing parents, and I had a great upbringing. But there were times, like we have as dads, where maybe they were paying attention to the older siblings for something, but I was like vying for their attention. I needed to feel loved in that moment. I need you. And they couldn't because they were dealing with something they were dealing with. It's not that they didn't love me, but I didn't feel loved in that moment. And as a 7-year-old, that logged into my whole being as I am not worthy of their love, or I am not, I'm not good enough. And even though that's false and that's not a true statement, I believe the adversary or whoever it was that locked into my memory that I didn't feel that way. And then I pushed it aside and moved on with life. But then it comes out, especially in our adult romantic relationships. And this 7-year-old little Bubba inside me was hurting inside, and I didn't know. It was subconscious. And so when a little trigger would come in that said I didn't feel loved, this little Bubba inside me would grab a hold of me emotionally and hold on so that I'm freeze or fight or flight or fawn, right? And until we dive in, and there's something called IFS, if you're going to be seeing therapy, find somebody who has attachment style expertise and internal family systems expertise, IFS. I think it can be hugely helpful. And what I needed was to be able to go in and talk to that inner child, accept that inner child for who he is, tell the inner child who I am now as a grown man, and allow that inner child to heal and not to feel, not when there is a trigger, to not just freak out, but to know that they're safe, to know that I'm here, that I'm in control, that I'm able to handle that situation without them freaking out. And I'm telling you, I know it sounds woo-woo, and I totally thought this stuff was woo-woo before, but men, like, this is part of the healing process. And we all have little T trauma, if not big T. And we must begin this healing process in order for us to be able to be the man we need for our children and our spouse.
Well, and I love that you brought that up, the word woo-woo, because it's so funny. Today on a live, I was chatting about that because I recently went on a retreat with one of my buddies, and he kept bringing that up. He's like, man, this is going to sound woo. And I was like, we don't have to say that anymore. Brother, we don't have to say that anymore, because the reality is we're doing the inner work. So we can call it woo, you can call it inner work, you can actually just call it the work, because the reality is if that's what it takes for you to show up better in this world, then you better get a whole lot more woo into your life then, because that's what we need in order to show up, right? And so first off, hats off to you, Bubba, for doing that work, because a lot of people will just continue becoming the victim. of their situations and not taking the accountability. I love that you say that because I constantly believe the more accountability we take as an individual, as hard as it gets, it's so much more beautiful as well, because wins, losses, all of it, it's on us. And we just have to say that it's on me. Like I wrote on my mirror NHP, and people, people will be like, what's NHP? And I said, it's not her problem. I also believe that when I have two boys, it's not his problem. It's not their problem. It's mine. Like these are the things I got to like step up and deal with so I can create that bowl. Right. And it's taking that full accountability in life. So I love that you've done that work, you've put it in, and you're not only doing that, you're helping other men also see that. So yeah, again, hats off to you, brother.
Dude, we need it. We need more men to wake up. This is a thing, I think. And there's more of us that we feel called. We really do, because when we realize this, we realize what we've been missing. It's like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew this 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I wish I was taught this stuff as a teenager.
Yes.
And there's almost like this generational healing, I believe, that can take place. Like, again, I have a phenomenal father, and he taught me and raised me well. But these are concepts and principles that didn't even exist.
Absolutely.
And I feel like as we learn and can grow from these experiences that you and I are going through, we can help our future generations to be more in tune. And literally, I've been wearing this all year. It says in tune, or tune in. It's the tagline for the fatherhood movement, because I want us to be in tune with our God, ourselves, our spouse, our children. And when we can be in tune, it's because we've healed the parts of ourselves that allow us to be in tune with all those around us, and we can be the leader that we must be. And this is just obviously passionate. You and I are passionate about this. We hope you men that are listening to this, or spouses, if you're hearing this and you want your man to be a part of something, like, look into dadhood. You got fatherhood movement. We're probably going to be doing something in the future together.
Yeah.
Because there is a time and a space right now, and more men need to come to this realization. We need to wake up, and we need to become stronger in all these areas so that we can lead our families to where we need to go, and the truest potential that we have. It feels like God is calling us to do this, and I don't think it's for any small reason. I think it's one of the most important things we can do on the earth right now, is come into him and then become that strength that he needs us to be. And I tell my boys and my girls, we pray about becoming warriors for Christ. And if we can become warriors for Jesus Christ, this is where we know what truth is, and we stand up for truth. We live truth. And when we make mistakes, we go solve it, fix it, ask for forgiveness, forgive, because these are the places when you can be confident before God. When you've healed yourself, you have empathy and charity, because you know you're not perfect. And so you understand when others make mistakes, you get it, and you have more compassion and empathy for them. And we can be that regulated individual that can let God speak to our hearts and our minds, because we're not flipping people off when we drive by them, right. Because we're not blowing off the handle when a spouse or a kid comes screaming at us with something, or a coworker or whatever. And these are pieces I just believe the world needs more of it. We need more strong men out there.
Absolutely. I want to shift gears real quick with your kids. So having that range between 5 and 15, I want to know what's happened recently, a moment with any one of your kids that's really impacted you as a man.
All right. So I've got 5 up to 15-year-olds. I've got basically I haven't done the adult kids yet, so I'm not going to speak on being an expert at adult kids. I've heard the bigger the kid, the bigger the problems. Adult kids bring adult problems, right? But I think the reality of having teenagers and having all the way down, the thing that I've noticed most is how much they need me as their dad. And, there's a bunch of statistics that talk about, there's a book called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And I know that book specifically talks about us being strong, emotionally strong men for our daughters to learn what a truly masculine man is, and to not be confused by the bad boy at school, because usually those bad boys at schools don't end up being the best husbands. And we don't want them to be marrying our daughters because they usually are self-conscious inside and don't have the true confidence before God. And so they take it out on usually their spouse, right? Or their children. And so as strong fathers, what I've learned is that, let's say my daughter was really frustrated about her clothing this morning. She did not want to wear that outfit today. And so she's got tears in her eyes. She's tired. She's hungry. She's frustrated. And there's two ways I can go about it. I can fly off the handle because we're late. We got to let's go. Come on. What are you doing? Just get clothes and get out of here. And how is that going to make her feel? And by all means, I make mistakes. I'm not perfect at this, but it's chaotic. All the kids are getting ready for school. I'm doing breakfast. I got to get them going. We can't be late. What am I going to do in that moment where tears are coming down her eyes? She's yelling and screaming. She doesn't want to do this thing. What am I going to do? As a dad, am I going to react because I've got a short fuse because I didn't get enough sleep? I wasn't taking care of myself properly. I haven't gotten the exercise I need throughout the week or the month to be in a better state of mind. I hadn't read my scriptures or said prayers so that I could be in a spiritual state of mind. People are saying I'm willing to die for my children, but are you willing to exercise for them? Are you willing to get enough sleep for them? Are you willing to stop scrolling to be able to hear them? Are you willing to get on your knees with that daughter who's crying in the morning as a hustle to get out of school? Are you willing to give her a big hug? The most masculine thing she needed in that moment was for me to just get on her level and embrace her and tell her it's going to be okay and just be present with her in that moment. Even if it took a couple extra minutes to allow her nervous system to feel my calm nervous system and for her to be able to breathe through and regulate. That was a magical moment that I feel like I have to learn every day, because with 8, I got somebody feeling those emotions at any moment of any day. And I have to be at my A game to be able to just calmly reassure and be the man, be the bowl for those emotions that are flowing around. And this goes not just for my 5-year-old, but for my 9 and my 14-year-old, but like every age. So if I could just say one thing, men, we need to be emotionally regulated because everyone around us needs us to be that emotionally regulated person. If somebody cuts you off, are you going to chew them out, cuss them out, flip them off, and your kids see that reaction in you? Or are you going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what? They probably need to get somewhere faster than I do. That's okay, right?
Yeah. Or they might not have even seen us.
They may not have even seen it.
We weren't even on their radar, but yet we're going to make their action part of our situation now and our kids' situation. And what I really love and what you said there too is this fact of when you show up that way in front of your daughters, because I only have boys, but when you're sitting there and you're doing that and showing up that way for your daughters, your boys are also watching that's how I show up as a man for my wife or my kids one day. Because they're just watching that. And then you're also setting the tone for your daughter that, look, this is the kind of man that you want to have as a partner in your life.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, I mean, if you haven't read Strong Daughters, Strong Father, Strong Daughters, like anybody listening, it's an unbelievably powerful book. It's going to wake you up. And a lot of what they teach, look, there's obviously we parent sons a little different than we parent daughters. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they're two completely different individuals and have different needs. But I do want to also teach my sons that they need to be able to control those emotions too. And again, not shove them all down, suppress them, but learn about them, learn how they feel, when they feel it, why they felt it, to be able to understand and recognize what that means. Because I believe us men have a high responsibility. With much is given, much is required. And we have a lot that we are supposed to do in God's eyes to be able to help our women around us and the girls, our spouses, our kids. I think it's a very high responsibility. And men who lose control, that is not what God wants. He knows we are better than that. And look, we all make mistakes, but it's time. It's time for us to wake up. It's time for us to get into our greatest state of masculinity. That's my opinion.
Well, Bubba, I respect and am so grateful that you jump on this podcast, and I want to stick to your time, let you get back to your day. But one final question I have is, when all your kids are out of the house, and you're not there present every day with them, what message do you want them to take away from you and to carry, to be like, this is what my dad taught me in this life?
Yeah. Look, if this is part of my legacy of what my children take away from me is number one, you put God first. You put God first, you put faith in him, and you know that he is in control, and we trust in God. So that's step number one. I hope my children, they learn from my example that they can become that trusting and that faithful in their maker. That's number one. Number two, I want them to recognize accountability. I want them to walk away knowing that they are accountable for their actions. I tell them now there are positive consequences and there are negative consequences. I know we typically have a connotation that consequences is negative, but based on our actions, there are positive and negative consequences. And I want them to know and to be accountable for those actions, because not only in work and in business, but in marriage and as parents, as mothers and fathers, they must be accountable for their actions. And so if they can turn to God and if they can be accountable, those are going to be two key principles. And then honestly, I hope they look at me and they say, Dad was fun. He's a positive guy. He looked at life in a good, positive way. There was light that emanated from him, and that they want to emulate that sharing of light. I really hope that they feel that goodness, that joy, that happiness that comes from my behaviors and my choices. That hopefully I've made more choices to bring positive consequences, and those bad choices that I made that brought negative consequences, that I'm able to learn from, repent of, and become better. And if they can learn some of those key principles, I'm going to be happy.
That's awesome, brother. So a lot of the guys that are listening to the show, they might want to connect with you on not only what you're currently doing, but what you're doing in the future. What's the best way for them to reach out and become part of your network?
I love it. So BubbaPage.com has all of my links to everything. BubbaPage.com has everything. But if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm very active on Instagram. That's where I have my two largest followings. And of course, fatherhoodmovement.com. Let's go. Let's wake up. Let's come together as a brotherhood. And we're going to find ways that dadhood and fatherhood movement can do some pretty cool things here in the future, no doubt. But you guys, please connect with me. I love it. Share this with your brothers. This kind of a podcast is something that needs to be, these are principles that you and I have been feeling. We need to share these principles. So brothers, as you listen to this, share it across your social platforms. Share it with those brothers in your group, your bro group that you go play ball with, or you go dirt biking with, or ski with, whatever, mountain biking with. Share this so that we can have an active discussion about it. You may not agree with everything that we've talked about here today, and that's totally okay. I'd love to be able to talk about it because I've got plenty to learn and grow from this experience as well. But we do need each other, brothers. We do need it.
Thank you so much, brother, jumping on the show. I appreciate your insight, your wisdom, and everything that you're doing. And I can't wait to collab and connect in the future with you.
You got it, Thomas. All right, man. Well, Dadhood brothers, let's connect. Let's rock and roll. We can all do it.
There it is.
We got this.
Hey, Dadhood, be repping Dadhood. Let's go.